You're listening to Catalyst for Change, and my name is Jessica Huckabee, your host. I started this podcast to learn about what makes people resilient, the people that have helped them along that path, and the tools they use to recover from those events. So this week I'll be talking to Lori Halliday of Horse and Heart Ranch, which is up in Northern California, the Santa Cruz Mountains. And she talks about what they're doing to help people through the COVID-19 situation that we're all dealing with, and how she helps other people through different traumas that they're going through in their life. So get ready to be inspired by the work that Lori does.
We've made very particular choices in the last month to consider and then to allow certain people to return to the program. And the only people who we have felt that it was really highly necessary to see are the people who, whether they are youth or adults, who have been experiencing different kinds of trauma and are having a trauma reaction to this kind of stimulus.
Okay.
So for a youth, for instance, it's really about not having the regular rhythm alone can really be disruptive.
Yeah.
And, we think of things like attention deficit as kind of a mild disorder. But the way attention deficit can symptom in a youth who no longer has the structure and the stimulus that we carefully put around these different kinds of individuals to support them in their process, when all of that falls away, we really have a kind of symptomatic being again who's not able to manage the things that they can when they're in that container. So for us, it's been primary first to open up to supporting those families. And, while we can't be the entire structure of, their sand play, their therapist, their school, their nanny, their doctor, their horsemanship and their soccer,
Yeah.
we've opened up, yes, please do come back and spend time in nature and be with your horse partner and get into that patterned breathing and the rhythmic breath and even the simple structure of how they come and they know what to do and they go to the familiar red barn and they get their things and they inquire about their horses and they go around and visit and they go through these simple patterns that are familiar, and it seems very restorative and brings a lot of solace to this confusing time where they don't have the same structures, and a lot of the people who are their support people are also different. We're behaving differently. People are behaving differently.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look the same at all. And we've instilled so much fear right now. I'm thinking in particular about one of the youth in the program who I see leaning heavily now on this mask.
Mm.
This mask has become this child's binky, even though she's 7 now and she's probably never did use a pacifier.
Yeah.
I see how this mask is becoming kind of a pacifier for her to deal with what we say is dangerous and scary out in the world. So I'm having to do a whole destructurizing around the mask conversation.
Interesting.
So okay, how are we gonna have it so you feel comfortable when I'm 30 yards away to breathe out here on this mountaintop where no one is? How am I going to have this child feel comfortable to take that mask off?
Yeah.
And
So
even
just,
though her mom's promoting taking the mask off, and it's not that it's not around her, but I'm just pointing out that there are so many aspects of what's happening now that are creating new patterns of fear and trauma and new kinds of pacification that we've never really seen before or thought of before. And it's sort of a paradox, because this thing that keeps us safe, if the masks are keeping us safe, I guess that's a bit of a debate. If the masks are keeping us safe, they're also creating a world where we don't see each other,
mm-hmm.
a world where our breath isn't primary, and it's confusing,
Yeah. It is a confusing new world that we live in.
Yeah,
And
and it's
helping people break down those walls of having to rely on that mask is really important.
yeah,
Or
it's so
even when they're
unusual.
safe in safe distance by themselves in nature, we need
Yes.
to figure out how to break down those
Yeah.
barriers.
Yeah, like I think we're okay now. Let's go back to breathing again. Let's open that up again.
Yeah.
And I'll turn around for a moment and be doing something, and I'll look back and she'll have the mask all the way back on again.
Wow.
And I wait a little while, and I just see that it's become a crutch.
Yeah.
And I feel it. I feel it in myself. I feel panic. Where's my mask? I don't have my mask. Oh God, I've gotten in the car and I don't have my mask.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I feel these anxieties and symptoms or behaviors getting a hold of me in a rhythmic and patterned way. I've even noticed this, the way we're starting to talk about the word. People are playing with the word COVID a lot, to the
Mm-hmm.
point where my girlfriends say this is COVID and that is COVID and this is ratchet and it's COVID, and it's kind of a joke. And if I, am looking tired or funny, my girlfriend's like, "Hey, COVID." And I said, you know what? Stop that. Like, let's don't participate in this powerful hypnotic process of wielding our words this way. Like we cannot bring the word and the sword out with so much repetition that it literally is a mantra, that it literally is a hypnotic mantra. What about all the other things we can be saying and doing and feeling? Like, what if you, every time you see me, you say, "Hey, healthy. Hey, health. Hi, beauty. Hi, the beauty way. Hey, nature. Hello, nature. Hey, mother nature." What
Putting
would
good
happen then?
energy. Yeah. Putting
Yeah.
good energy into it.
What if we rhythmically said mother nature as many times as we've said COVID? What would happen to the planet?
Because the words we speak have a lot of energy,
Right.
a lot of
Right.
resonance in the world.
And if we say those words over and over to each other and to our children, of course, the first thing we want to do is put on our mask. It's like
Yeah.
it's like they're going together. It's like we're ingraining, or we're entraining with a collective idea that we actually don't know so much about yet.
Very interesting times that we're in. And I feel like it's an immense time of growth and change too. So there's a lot of silver linings to it that I've seen in the people I talk to, like people who are reaching out that I haven't talked to in years, or people starting a podcast, or finally having time to do that project or build that shed. Or
I want to jump into what's popping up in my mind that I think with my program, we're really leaning in on during any times of trauma and any times of stress. And yes, it is contemporary, certainly now.
mm-hmm.
And that is nature. That is Mother Nature. When all the things have changed, when all the paradigms have changed, whether that's from wartime or a divorce, a pandemic, when all of the structures are changed, what can we lean in on? What is the same? The patterns, the simplistic patterns of Earth, or the beautiful complex patterns of Earth, the rising of the sun and the setting of the sun and the cycles of the moon, the cycles of the season, going to the sea, going into the woods, those things are so ancient and so constant and have lived through so many changes and so many plagues. Those are still there and full of resiliency and full of tenacity. And so for me, that constant, that ancient constant of nature brings so much soothing that we don't even have to point at the other human to help us or save us, the other doctor, teacher, counselor. That if we really let ourselves lean into this very old and very rhythmic pattern of being in nature, that alone creates a container that withstands change, withstands time. And so it's so powerful when youth and adults, when families come to the ranch and they really be present in nature. And Jess, you've been here. There's a lot of different parts of nature happening here that strike the vertical because we're on a mountain, because we can see the sky. We can get connected into a vertical plane and all the things we imagine in relationship to skies and mountains and view, long view. And then because we're on land with animals, we get very connected to the earthly plane, to the mundane, to the dirt, to the nature, to the plants, to the rhythms of the animal. And I think there's something very holy in this exact intersection I'm talking about that's been striking the soul of women and men for all of time. And so I feel that that's really at the heart of the offering that we share with people here, that we're holding space for a place in nature for people to come and do their personal development work, their journey work, held in a very ancient container of nature.
Nice. And can you tell me about how this idea of horse and heart originated?
Yes, it's interesting because I didn't go towards horses out of a desire to have employment or work with them or anything like that. And Jessica, I know you'll relate to this right now. My whole life was based on being a professional commentator for my 2-year-old's every move. And that's what my whole life was about. Wow, Ella loves to go on the water, and now Ella walks down the sidewalk, and Ella sees a bird, and Ella loves that dog. And I would just be constantly narrating her life. And when we moved to this area in the Santa Cruz Mountains, Ella saw the horses, and Ella loved the horses in the neighborhood, and Ella loves to bring them apples. And we started narrating and commentating on a life of what Ella loved here. And pretty quickly it was clear that as Ella loved all big animals, so did Ella love horses. And I followed her right into that world. I became afraid that she would go into the world and I would lose her. Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
I was afraid I would be like a soccer mom, and that I would sit in a van and watch her from a distance and try to understand what was happening or whether she was safe or not from a distance. And so pretty immediately, as my only child, I thought, no, I need to know, is she okay? And I need to understand what she's doing. And what, for God's sake, what if she actually tries to get a horse? Am I going to be in charge of it? Will I have to care for the horse? So I began educating myself. And so I guess it follows the same theme that I share with many people, and I really deeply believe, which is that your life will be full and fruitful if you follow what you love. And so people say, oh, so you followed horses because you love horses. And the truth is, I followed my daughter. I was in love with that child. I'm still in love with her. She's a 22-year-old woman now. I'd follow her anywhere. And my love for her brought me into that world. She opened that world for me. And then very quickly, people came and said, oh, please share with us. Please tell us what you're doing. Share with us what you understand about the horse world. And I was a very reluctant leader and said, no, I don't know anything. I don't understand. I've just started studying myself. And they said, oh, yes, you're our teacher. Please share it with us. We only have this amount of money. Please share it with us. And I said, no, I am a student. I don't know enough. I don't know enough. And the grandmother, we call her Bella, she said, are you saying you're not willing to share what you know with my grandchildren? So the rest is history. I started sharing what I knew with small Sophia and Victoria at that time. They're also women, grown-up women now, and my daughter. And little by little, we shared with more children and more families, and programs developed, a therapeutic program developed, summer camps developed, natural horsemanship trainings developed. And so this was out of a love for my daughter, and then out of a love for our privilege to follow horses and be in nature, and then out of our really quick understanding that this isn't just for us, this land and this privilege is for anybody who could possibly get here.
Mm-hmm.
So we've done everything we can since the very beginning to share it with as many people as possible.
Wonderful. Now, do you do some form? So you do a form of equine therapy, is what, the stand in,
Yeah.
mental health practice,
Yeah.
they call it equine therapy. Can you tell me more about how you teach people about themselves
Yeah.
through horses and help them heal?
Yeah, I was just going to make a quick delineation. There are a variety of kinds of equine therapeutic practices. Some of those lean really heavily into the medical and are considered psychotherapy. And
Mhm.
there's a psychotherapist involved. It's called equine facilitated psychotherapy. And there are other myriad of practices, including equine facilitated experiential learning, which is a therapeutic practice, not necessarily with a psychotherapist. And then there's also equine experiential learning. And again, this is a therapeutic practice without a psychotherapist. That being said, it happens that my background is in the behavioral sciences, and I studied psychology, sociology, and criminology, and have worked in mental health for a long time. But that's not really necessary for the program that we have or the practices that we do. There's a national organization called EGALA, who is an overarching organization who trains people to do some parts of these practices. I trained under a program with Linda Kohenoff, and her program is called Epona Quest. So the work that we do is therapeutic, and we set up a container here, which I've described earlier as a natural container here, a ranch, earth, sky. We can see the water from here. 10 horses in a herd live here at our small ranch. And we invite people into this natural setting to come and do their work. And so what that might look like on a given day is to arrive, to come and check in and gather the things you think you might need, a grooming kit for your particular friend, and then to go out and find your horse. Where is your horse on the land today? And make your way around the same way you'd find a friend or a lover or your child, to go out and seek them. And a relationship develops very slowly, initially by sharing space together, by being together as friends, learning each other at a distance, perceiving each other's mood and body language, and then over time leads to grooming and interacting. And you can imagine relationships develop either quickly or over time that are very rich relationships and very present relationships with these really magnificent creatures in this very sacred and protected land, in a moment, in a pause, where it's really you and the horse. And I, as the facilitator, am more focused on the container. I am more holding space in the container for the relationship that's emerging. I do my best not to meddle too much. Clearly, I train the humans to learn and adopt ways to keep themselves feeling comfortable and safe. And a lot of the work and relationship parts develop really simply between the individual and the horse.
And how do they work through their traumatic events with these horses? Can you tell me more about that relationship that they establish?
Yeah, some of the therapeutic teams ask me, what are you doing to the kids? Why is this so effective? What are you doing that they can't do in the in-room therapy? Why do they struggle in in-room therapy, but they flourish with the horses? What are you doing to them? They ask me this all the time. What are you doing to them? And I find that very interesting, because I'm not doing anything to anyone. And I think that might be the key. The therapeutic process isn't a doing. The therapeutic process is a container that I am holding in a very focused and integral way. This is not an unconscious container, but it's not my intention, or is it my action to inflict something, to inject something, to point at something. And so quite naturally, it seems like a phenomena to humans, I'm not really sure why, but quite naturally, through the process of falling in love with a beautiful horse, surrounded by the redwood trees and the hummingbirds and the hawks and the beauty, a whole system, an entire system, starts to gradually go from fight or flight to rest and digest. And these long breathing patterns of entrainment with this 1,200-pound huge electromagnetic heart field of a horse, we start to entrain with this breathing pattern as we stand near, be with, brush, walk with. And as the system starts to relax over time, trust and love and relationship and rapport are built. And these relationships are sometimes difficult to have with a human first after trauma. And somehow the indefatigable spirit of a human is often willing to let nature in. Let nature in, let the woods in, let a horse in, let a dog in, fall in love with a hummingbird. Sometimes these things are more accessible to us after trauma than another human, a doctor, a closed room, a clinical setting, a clipboard.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. So these relationships, they start developing with the horses and nature and the hummingbirds and just every beautiful thing that's around when they're there starts
Yeah.
spilling over eventually to the humans in their life, it sounds like.
Oh, absolutely. And so I don't do anything. I don't have to point to anything. I don't have to ask any questions. And over time, this human will pop open like a gift box and share things with me that I never asked about. They'll be in a rhythmic grooming pattern and a wealth spring of joy or sadness or whatever's underneath will just start bubbling up like a spring. We're not looking at each other. We're not talking to each other. It's just bubbling up. Sometimes it's not words. Sometimes it's tears. Sometimes it's laughter. Sometimes it's, being shut down or feeling separate, or sometimes it's feeling connected. Whatever it is comes up quite naturally, without force, without effort, without prodding, without having to be pointed at, through the relaxation of the system, through the parasympathetic relaxation, through the activation of the vagus nerve. When we're relaxed and we feel safe, we can let down.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Now, so these kids that are coming to you, how do they find out about what you're doing with horses and how you're holding this space for people?
I think a primary way that a lot of the youth who are really in transition and struggling come to our program are through foster care agencies. There are a couple agencies who we have a very close relationship with in Santa Cruz County. And we also have had youth come directly through the county office. So again, these have been primarily youth who have parents have lost their parental rights, and the youth has become a ward of the state. And they are considered often intensive treatment foster care, ITFC. And so they're considered kind of risked out of other kinds of traditional therapies. And they're often considered really challenging project youth. We don't experience them that way. It's a bit baffling to us. We haven't really been able to wrap our logical minds around that yet, because they do so beautifully with the horses and they become so at stake and in deeply ingrained partners with these horses and this land and over time with us. So we end up meeting very different people, very different youth and adults than I think what many people have seen over time. I don't know, they don't even appear the way to us that they're labeled. So it's quite miraculous. I can understand why people think we're doing something to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
have you worked in any other spaces besides with foster youth?
Oh yeah, we have a lot of adults in the program, including, it's been a deep love and focus for me to work with women. We've hosted many harvest ceremonies here in the fall where women come and spend the weekend and do their own journey work and have time to really deepen in their self-care, going to the sea, being near the horses, learning how to have different interactions and experiences with their horses. And for women, frankly, not to over simplify, but for women, it seems that we often have work with boundaries and that we can develop more our voice and tone and shape and style of boundaries and ways to say no. And this seems to come up often in women's trainings that we host. a myriad of other things you can imagine, the voice, embodiment, magnetism, how to draw something towards you, how to call in what you love. So many brilliant, successful women are still struggling with some piece that they're really frozen in or really stuck with, whether that's the job, the spirit, the partner, the house, whatever the thing is. And often it's a piece that we're not truly in alignment with inside our own spirit, inside our own heart's desires. Taking the time to be with self, to return to the breath, to become fully embodied in nature, to connect with the animal spirit, the animal body of another animal, and then, of course, resonate that within oneself, can really return us to the question, what are my heart's desires? What do I love? What is the highest vibration for me? And as we tune into our true loves, our magnetic vibration increases and we unwittingly draw it directly towards us. And so this has been a beautiful manifestation and magnetism and boundary practice for many women over the last 20 years who come and study here too. And I honestly, I think these are for men, for women, for children. These are for all of us. Horses, all of us learn these same practices to be with one another.
Wonderful. You mentioned women and children, and I know men are like they have different ways of dealing with things. Have you done a lot with men in your programs?
Well, fortunately, even though it does seem to be a female-dominated field, just horses in general, fortunately, men love horses too. Fortunately, yes, beautiful men have come to the program, and many boys who have grown up to be men who come back and volunteer have come to our summer camps. And they're brave enough to weather the percentages of men to women in our our programs. And they come and they enjoy themselves deeply. And in fact, I think in some ways, it's such a rich piece for men to dive into the realms of horsemanship that lean more into consensual leadership, the kinds of horsemanship that lead more into agreement, who create paradigms when you can lead from all seats, who create the ability to follow from a leading position, to follow to lead. Like, what does it mean to be willing to be the follower and somehow still lead from that position? So these are very unusual paradigms. It's a paradoxical conversation, and they don't really exist in a lot of the masculine and patriarchal hierarchical structures. And so you can imagine what a beautiful bridge it is for either any of us. Women, we grow up in a very masculine paradigm structure too. So this kind of flipping of the paradigm to understand that actually a warm, competent leader, a horse whisperer, works better with a stallion than a cold, dominant or cold, incompetent style. So I think men become very curious about this mystery. It is a bit of a Jedi practice to understand consensual leadership.
I love the way you put that. That is so powerful. So men, women, and children, anybody can get something out of the type of work that you do and the type of workshops and just the kind of care that you have for the land and healing people, letting people heal themselves through nature and
Yeah.
horsemanship. Now, where can people find out more about getting involved in some of your programs?
So we have a website, horseandheart.org, and we are a nonprofit because we spend a lot of our time during the year to make sure that 1 in 3 students comes to our program on full scholarship. And that's a big number. We set that high precedence for ourselves. We raised that bar for ourselves, and so we strive for that every year. And we've been really blessed and fortunate to have participants, collaborators, donors who help make sure that 1 in 3 students can come on scholarship. Again, that's horseandheart.org, and you'll see information there about our programs that happen year round And also, of course, we invite anybody who loves horses, who love youth, who are into personal growth work, nature, who love NorCal, to become a donor and support our programs, and know that we vigilantly stand by making it accessible to everyone.
Wonderful. Now, is there anything that you feel we haven't talked about today that you'd like to make sure to mention?
Yeah, I'd love to just spend a couple minutes talking about the horses.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I wandered into the whole field of horses by following my beloved soulmate, my daughter, into her love for horses, and my desire to trust her curiosity and her vision and her beauty kept me walking forward into the world of horses. And it is the absolute greatest love of my life, the greatest privilege of my life, to live with horses. And if everything fell away and I could no longer do this job, and I've thought about all those things recently due to the changes with the virus and the changes in our world during this time, I would it would be so enough for me to have the privilege to live with them. And it is my first love. I love it that I can offer it, but it's truly my own personal, selfish first love. The 10 horses who are here, many of them came to us under rescue circumstances. Many horses have been brought to us at the end of their life, and I have acted as the way shower for these horses, as their Sherpa into the green fields of their heavenly existence. And these are the most profoundly giving, loving, spiritual beings I've ever met. Whatever we might imagine it would be like to understand the brilliance of a whale, to look into the eye of a whale and see into the soul of a whale, it is like that with every single horse here. They are given so much love and protection here, and yet, let's be clear, these horses are animals who are kept here by humans. And so, in my deepest heart's desire, I would really wish for all animals to be more free and to have more land and to be able to live more of their own sovereign life and have more of their own sovereign nature. So the most I can do to serve these horses is to take really good care of them here on the land where they are, and to make sure that the people who come and interact with them are in the same sovereign spirit, are here to do their beautiful journey work, to be respectful and loving, because all of horses of all of time deserve that, and many horses have served us their whole lives.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, I will definitely have all your information, your website address about Horse and Heart in our show notes. And I really appreciate you coming on and telling us more about your journey and what brought you to horses and where it's led you. So thank you, Lori.
I'm so grateful for the work you're doing. It's so inspiring and so timely. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You can find more information about Lori and the work that she does at horseandheart.org. And tune in next week and hear another story of resilience and how people are making differences in the lives of others.